We are live.
Thank you, Mrs. DeBrow. We want to welcome all of you for coming. We truly appreciate seeing you here. We'll go ahead and call our meeting to order. The floor would be open for a motion to approve the agenda.
Madam Chair, I make a motion that we approve the agenda.
Second.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes. Thank you. We will move right to public comment. If you want to come up here, we can hear you better.
Yeah, remind them a little bit about public comment. 3 minutes
Sure.
and-
Just as a reminder, it's not to exceed 3 minutes. Discussion of personal matters or personal attacks are not appropriate. The board will listen to public input without comment except to ask related questions. You can leave any written documents you want with us. And we will start with Neil Wood.
Thank you. I guess my question being, parents at our sports games, especially in the gyms. First of all, we appreciate having an opportunity, or Shane, or I guess the board making an opportunity for us as parents to have certain jobs at the games that allows us to go to home games. I'm wondering, has there been any communication that you can tell us for not allowing parents to be at games, not allowing parents to be at away games? I guess my question is the common sense behind that rationale of not being able to be there for our kids. And is there a liability associated with that to not be there if one of our kids were to get hurt? Is there a liability there that the state is willing to take upon themselves? Can you communicate anything that you know on this matter?
So I know with the ambulance, if a kid gets hurt out of practice or at a game or whatever, then the coach basically takes the place of a parent and makes those decisions. Like if we were to come on scene and say, this is a minor, what should we do? Or if, then the coach takes steps into that role. But
And I think there'll be a bunch of this that we'll be able to address during our discussion. I've written that down, just what's been communicated, I guess, or asked for an exemption on parents being allowed to games. I'll talk on the common sense that is there or lacks thereof on some of these situations. Liability, kids getting hurt, those are things that we've seen, and we can discuss that. Is there anything else you'd like us to discuss on the meeting?
No, that's mainly my question.
Okay.
Is parents at
Well, hopefully we can address that as the board discusses, and if not, feel free to stay afterwards and we can visit longer.
Great.
Thank you, Neil.
thanks, Neil. Pamela Smith.
Okay, I also, on a similar note, was questioning the parents being able to go to games. And I'm wondering if you have seen the Soda Springs School District have put out new activity guidelines. And it says, please be advised attendance at games, activities, and events is privilege, not a right. No limits to the number of spectators will be monitored at this time. Social distancing is recommended. Masks are recommended for all attendees, but not required. All spectators are encouraged to remain in their seats. Small children are to remain seated with parents. Visitors and home spectators will be separated to the extent possible. Persons exhibiting COVID-19 symptoms should not attend. High-risk individuals are encouraged to remain home and watch activities by the live stream methods that their school is providing. And then they give a link that regards the stage 2 healthy order. So I'd like you to consider that as well and adopting that for our school district. But I also wanted to talk about, right now I have 2 kids home because they are within the 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. And I'm wondering, just because somebody in those grades have become positive, are those kids sick or are they just showing positive tests? Because at this point, a talk from Jay Bhattacharya from Stanford University, he's an MD and a PhD. He's talking about those who are at risk, and he says, for young children, this disease is less dangerous than the seasonal flu. This year in the United States, more children have died from the seasonal flu than from COVID. But he talks about how this is mentally working on the kids and emotionally and socially affecting the children. So I'd like you to consider that as you discuss these COVID plans, because they could test positive and never come down with the symptoms, but they are missing school. They're missing this in-learning opportunity. He goes on and talks about where we can go from here and how, you know, building up a herd immunity. I know people are for and against that, but it's like creating a vaccine for people. You give it to them a little bit and eventually we build up to that. That's what vaccines are. So if we can keep the kids in school and get them a little bit immune to this, then we will eventually fight that. So I'd like you to take that into consideration as well as you discuss this. It would be better for the kids to be in school, and those with symptoms, please stay home. I understand that, but those that are not, we are dealing with a minority versus a majority here, and the majority of these kids need to be in school. If the teachers want to wear their mask, great. If the students want to wear their mask, great. That is what your choice is. But I ask you to please consider that. And I have this paper for you, Mrs. Chairman.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Raquel Torgerson.
First of all, I commend all of you because no one envies your seat right now. And I'm really grateful. I think we're making little steps. We're all living with different norm. I just got done coaching a season and now I'm a parent of a season. And so I guess I'm here to kind of represent both. My thing is I talked to Shane a little bit last week and I've been aware of the letter that the governor stated about no spectators and we're trying to find ways to get parents in. I guess I'm here in kind of behalf of the parents not from our district, to see what we could do, you know, to get parents allowed into away games. And when I read the governor's statement, and of course we're all governed by certain law, you know, and it states how no spectators, but we can have representations. And, you know, I'm here to kind of propose maybe a plan, you know, of an idea that other districts are using to get around some of the protocols, or maybe to govern their freedom through the protocols, however you want to look at it. But what some of the other districts have done, and I really admire Salmon, they live in the middle of nowhere. They're allowing other people to come. And the way they stated it was equal representation, 2 equal representations for each athlete. And, you know, you think about 2 years ago when that first kid got hurt in our gym, and there was, who wanted to make those decisions? You know, no one knew the severity of this thing. And we can say coaches, and, you know, I know when I'm coaching a game and a player gets hurt, it's not me that's administering care. It's my assistant coaches. As a head coach, and I don't know how many people are aware, but, you know, we have to be recertified every 2 years in concussions and CPR. But I had a situation last year when my daughter got hurt at home. I went out there, they took her off the floor. I went back to sit down. They then motioned me to come back in the locker room. I went back. There was an administrator, there was a coach, there was a cop. I went back, I started talking to her, and she was in a lot of pain, and asked her if she'd heard this. Well, you know, everyone's trying to help. But we did have a person back there out of those 3 that grabbed her arm and said, what? And I said, whoa, what are you doing? And of course, I wasn't as calm as I am right now. But they're like, well, I just want to see if they have, you know, if they can feel their fingers. And I looked at this person, I said, are you trained? Are you a trained medic? Are you a trained orthopedic? No, and I know their position was more of a volunteer. But had he moved her arm, he would have hurt it more. I mean, we get to the ER and the doctor's like, well, it's a good thing no one wanted to be the hero, you know, because of the invertedness of her injury. And you know, my thoughts are is that part, but also the emotional part. You know, at a game the other day with South Fremont, everyone staying distance. And I thought about the girls from the other team. And, you know, one girl made a good shot and I'm like, oh, that's a good shot, you know, and I almost feel obligated to cheer for them because they don't have a parent there. What is that emotionally doing? And I'm going to use an experience which, you know, maybe my daughter won't appreciate. But she had a really great game. She came home, and then the emotional part, because she had no representation there. And I really, really feel in order to take back some of the responsibilities, it's my responsibility as a parent. It's not the coaches. I know they're doing the best job that they can. Speaking from a coach, I'm going to be mindful if it was my own kid, but you're still not their guardian. And I really feel if any of you sitting here, we're all different venues of life. I have children deep in high school. Some of you have children out. Some of you have little kids, you know, but we have to speak up for these kids. We're taking away things that if one of them got hurt, the liability you're going to have to face. I know as a coach, I don't want to make those decisions at a away game. You know, there was a girl from Salmon last year. Her parents were in another state at a wrestling match. Their daughter fell. She couldn't feel her legs. Then the coaches had to make the decisions. I want the right to make the decision for my child. And I know if our district allows other patrons to come, representations of equal representation for each athlete, that it will open doors to allow us to go to other districts. And like I said, so I guess my voice is mainly for the other districts, because once we do it, it will start, you know, making it possible. And I applaud Salmon, Soda, North Gym, Marsh Valley. They all changed their 2 representation for each athlete. So I guess that's the plan I'm proposing. If we could do our 2 representations, 0 spectators, it's a start in the right direction. So that's just the plan I'm proposing. Thank you.
Taylor Smith.
My first question is, am I on camera or just voice? Am I?
You're looking
Glad I
good.
wore my hat.
You're looking good. You're looking good.
Okay, the first, I just want to bring some attention to the board on a little different note. I do a lot of stuff for people in the community and visit a lot of people, and particularly a generation ahead of me, or a couple generations ahead of me. They get a real concern. I've had the same thing and I've talked to Jeff about this, and the elementary does good, about how often I can count on one hand the number of days a flag flies on the pole at the high school. And particularly yesterday was Pearl Harbor Day, and there's a flag everywhere in this community except for the West Jefferson School District buildings, both of them. So I made phone calls and it changed, and I wasn't very excited about it. They flew flags. And on another note, just the attitude from the community is like, man, is there any patriots left down there? Or are we just completely gone, too much education going on down there? And I say this from another point of view as a parent with a student in a high school English class. And the teacher's solution to COVID was mandatory mask mandate, and we should be a mandatory vaccine. Everyone should have to get it. And somebody said, hey, we have rights. We get to choose that kind of stuff. And the teacher said, well, we could fix a lot of stuff. And I'm not verbatim. I'd have to have it verbatim, but the attitude was we could fix a lot of problems if everybody wasn't so concerned with their precious rights and their precious liberties. And he rolled his eyes. Okay. To me, does he have the right to say that? Yes, he does. Do we have a right to not have that kind of a person in our school? Yes, we do. That frustrates the heck out of me, that kind of an attitude, rolling your eyes about precious rights and precious liberties, which, as we watch all the time, they're getting thrown down the toilet all the time. So, and then the other attitude of that same teacher was, he's like, you guys come to this class, he stated in this, and I don't have this verbatim, but this is what was repeated to me by my son. He said, you guys don't have political information. You sit in a tractor and a swather all summer and listen to Rush Limbaugh, and you get fed that crap, so you think you're politically informed. Okay? So it's been burning me. it leads right on to this COVID thing, because to me, we are just lapdogging this whole thing, and we gotta push back, or else this bunch we're raising up right here, they're not gonna have what we have. There is to me, from the outside of the community, there just seems, and I hear it from, it's the generation 60, 70-year-old people are like, hey, we put a lot of damned effort into flying this flag, or to saving this thing. Let's support that deal. So I had to vent that for me.
Thank
Thanks.
you. Okay. Did anybody else have that's all I have. So, okay. We'll jump right into our COVID plan then. You guys have a copy of the.
If I could share the board, please, share the screen. Yeah. Mrs. Dowling, could you open that door for us? Thank you. You had to turn it down when the music kicked on.
Yeah.
All right, so the proposal for the meeting, the reason why the COVID plan needed to come back into discussion, Jefferson County did move into the red level, and in our previous plan, our current plan before we're discussing it, there were discussions on, as we go into different plan levels, there were different schedules in place. As we've learned more about COVID and in school, the board's been clear in all the other meetings that we want kids in school. I know that's something that was brought up in our public comment, that we want to have kids here for the most. If we were following the recommendations to the letter of the law, we would have a lot more disruption. And I know we have a disruption right now in the 5th grade through 7th grade. And I can speak on that without going into detail. We've had, when I say going into detail on sharing specifics on individuals and making sure that we're protecting the names of those that have tested positive. So with this last exposure that we had, it wasn't just a single incident, it was the days of exposure that brought into the concern and the reason why administration did what they did this last weekend. And we've had 3 previous students who've tested positive. In each of those situations, it was for very limited time. They were at school for half a day, 1 day, and it was cut. When I got the information from Eastern Idaho Public Health, it gives me a range of days that those students are potentially spreading it. And we have to take into account, yes, the students, but we also, it's not the students that I'm mostly worried about, because I agree with what Mrs. Smith said in her public comment. Kids aren't really getting sick, but I do have some teachers that I'm very worried about, and ones that I don't want to lose, and neither do we. We don't want to lose them, because I want my kids to be in that class. When I got the case on Sunday afternoon is when I got the email. And it indicated, and I saw the range on the students that were tested positive, and I checked the attendance records. Those students were in school multiple days throughout that week. And so there's no way for me to go back and look 4 or 5 days back and track who's been around them the most and only have a certain amount. I know it disrupts the kids, but this is the first time it's happened for us here at West Jefferson on a large scale. And I've had a lot of positive feedback for people saying you did the right thing. Some in this audience may not agree with that, and that's okay. So that's the reason why on this situation we did it. And I don't want to, if you look at our plan that we've had, and I want to discuss it a little bit more, it has been very proactive to keep kids in activities. Because we've had really close calls on other situations where if we were at another school, we would have had kids missing state tournaments. We'd be having kids missing in a lot of other activities. And so I want to just commend our board publicly and say thank you for keeping the best interest of the kids, because we recognize that the social and emotional needs of the kids are just as important. And I'm hoping that these 4 days are just a reminder of how good it is to be in school. I know it's not the ideal situation, but we're put in some tough situations. So
But it's a good reminder too that when your kids are sick, keep them home, because when you don't, this is what happens. So,
and and I highlighted things in the letter that went out, and those were things that were already in. And let's go ahead and look at the proposed plan that we have here. So on the proposed plan with the changes, I want to simplify our plan, get rid of all of the different things where if we're in green, yellow, orange, or red, that our schedule will look differently. I want to use the guidelines from Eastern Idaho Public Health as we go, because we are in red right now. But
We're in orange, aren't
we are in red as of today.
As
Mhm.
of today,
Yep.
they changed that level, so instead of 50, they dropped it to
45. But here's the thing that's most important is I want to make decisions based on what's happening inside of our school. I don't want to make decisions based off of what the number is at the county. And the action that was taken Sunday evening was directly to what happened here in the school. And so I would like to just say that when you can see all the highlighted areas that are on here, and those of you that we can pull it up on the other ones, I want to add to I want to take it off called initially we called this the COVID return to school plan. I just want to call it the district plan because we're already here. But I want to highlight that we want to balance the health and safety of students and the social emotional well-being of students. Learning in person. We want to know that learning in person is our goal. And that the levels from Jefferson County are just a way for us to gauge the areas, but they don't always correlate with the COVID levels in our rural school district. In-person learning will be the preferred method of instruction for each level identified with Eastern Idaho Public Health. This is something that another school district who had a more aggressive approach to their schedule changes, and they were always going from either 50% students to, we tried the hybrid days, and they just came back this last week and said we're going in person as well. So they're following kind of the same suit that we've been doing. We're not out of line with what others are doing. Other things I just want to highlight on this plan, and this is one that was in the letter. If you've received a COVID test, do not attend school while waiting for the results. If you have, and really, we can encourage people to test, but we can't force people to test. And I'm not even want to go down the line of having a mandatory test at all. I want it to leave that to the parents and respect that. But it goes back to the same thing. We've been working really well, trusting our parents and saying, if you're sick, stay home. If you're sick, stay home, and that's been working. We just had the little hiccup this last week with that. If someone in your household has a confirmed positive test, then that's where we're seeing the spread, and that's what other schools are saying. It's not happening here in school, and I'm hoping that we don't see it. I'm optimistic and positive that we've with our 5th grade through 8th grade, where we're having our remote days now, that we've stopped any potential other spread going on here. But if you have it in your household, that's a different thing. So if I have COVID in my household, I need to take those precautions. I can't take advantage and be like, I'll just go to school or to other things. If I have a positive case, my kids should stay home until I'm well and their contagious period's over. Then other than that, the other changes that you go through, the district will look at each situation of a positive COVID case to identify the potential spread and make a decision on what steps to take. The action or actions taken will be made after consideration of current CDC and health recommendations in the district plan. Consideration will also be given on the district's ability to maintain operations with impacts to staffing and resources. And so just because we have COVID cases doesn't mean we're automatically every single time going to do what we did this last week and have a whole group go remote. I'm hoping that this is a learning experience for our families and for everyone involved. For the most part, if people are sick or staying home, the board has allowed people to continue to come to school, but wear a mask during the symptom tracking period. which is something that gives the option for kids, instead of just saying you have to be isolated automatically, you're able to stay in school and keep learning that way. The options the district may include are those mandatory mask wearing during symptom tracking, the recommended and required isolation for at least 7 days, if you choose not to wear a mask, and scheduled changes depending on in-school spread, which would be our remote learning, which we just did, or blended learning days to reduce the numbers of students in the school. And so the purpose of the blended learning would be not to completely cancel school, but have our teachers have a homework assignment for those students that don't necessarily need to be in school that day, but they can invite students to come in on a blended day. So a blended day is not a full out remote day. School operations will still happen. Buses will run as normal, but we're reducing the number of students in the school. This could be used as a strategy for, like I said, reducing the numbers of potential COVID opportunities to exposure, but it also could be used as a way for academics to be focused on as well, for those that are most needy and needing the extra support at that time. If mandated by the governor or state board to go remote, we do have those same learning expectations and schedules. I don't see this happening. It could, but we just wanted to have something in there in case it did. The one part also that connects to a couple of our community comments, activities will be reduced to this space requiring 28 square feet per person and or adhere to the recommendations from governor's stages. That's a difficult one, and one that I feel like I'm put in a tough situation as a board, as representing an organization of a public entity. And really the delicate situation that brings. The recommendations say 28 feet per square person if you can maintain the distancing. Our exemption plan was asked for that during stage 3, and that was 238 people in the gym, but we moved into stage 2. And so I'm just going to step back for a second and talk about that process, because that was some of the things that were brought up by the community members. Questions on, well, why? What was the process? What did we try to do to fight for, I guess, fans, if you want to look at it that way, or representatives for students? When we moved into stage, well, I'll back up. Beginning of the year, we were in stage 4. It was 250 people in the gym. We didn't have to worry about anything. The district volleyball champions, we have Coach Torgerson in here. They won the game. I went down, handed out information on going to state. Don't worry, we have 300 tickets that can go. Monday, we moved to stage 3, which limited it to 50. And it severely cut back the representation on people being able to be there. 2 weeks later, we went into stage 2, limiting it to 10, which I don't disagree with all of the issues that are coming up with that. With it's not fair for the kids. There's a liability. There's kids that could get hurt. I totally understand that. And I'm not here trying to defend. I'm not trying to defend the logic behind it, because I can't. I can't defend the logic behind it. So when we look at the governor's order, oops, that's not the right one. When we look at the governor's order, and I brought this up in our PAW meeting, the question was, is this really a law? Is this a law that you have to follow, or is it a way that you can just push back on? Because I've seen things on social media. We have emails coming into us saying, push back, go against, defy. We are not going to push back, fight against, and defy as a public entity. Now we are open to, and I like the wording that Mrs. Torgerson mentioned, work within the guidelines of the wording of the stage. And I felt like we did that on this last basketball game at home, that we were working within the guidelines with who was a spectator, who wasn't a spectator. And so I contacted our legal counsel and visited with them first to find out does this carry the weight of law? And I do have on here the document. It is public documentation on this one. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is because the board needs to know if a decision is made, what will really, the way that option. I can't speak for other school districts on what they're doing or what they're trying to do. Whether it's carefully guided through a stage or whether they're just flat out defying an order, I don't know. I don't know what their choice is. And I'm not going to come out and say, well, this district is defying it one way or not. This is something that we just need to decide here. But it just says in here, a number of districts have raised questions with regard to the governor's stage 2 order. And the question asked is this actually a law? And it does carry the weight of law at this time. There are some representatives in our Idaho legislation that disagree with the governor. And they're very open about saying he's out of his line. But as of right now, according to our attorney, what he is doing, what he has proposed, carries the weight of law. Now, if these representatives want to change that law in the next legislative session, they can do that. But actions taken during this time, anything that we do that goes away from the recommendations or guidelines opens us up for more liability. And as a board, we have opened ourselves up to some liability with what we've done with our district plan on how we have it with kids coming into schools. We don't run it the exact same way as other districts. And some people could come in and say, we don't have that protection like you think you do. But it's there is some protection, but it all comes back down to the risk versus reward, risk versus potential, I don't know, legal ramifications on that. And so I don't know, does anybody want to switch places with the board member up here? So we might be more comfortable with making a decision on some of these things, but it's one of those things that, say, as a superintendent, do I come out and say, let's defy the highest legal authority in our state openly? I would say no, and I'm not comfortable doing that. However, I am okay with looking at differences in wording and differences in interpretation of the statutes. And so we could do those at different parts. So I don't know if that, any questions, board members? I just want you guys to discuss for a second, or talk or ask questions or things that worry you or anything you've heard.
Didn't we decide at one time that if, under the circumstances, the way things are with how many people, the outbreak, didn't we decide that if we couldn't stop spectators from coming, we wouldn't be able to play at all? So it's a matter of parents being there. If the parents want to be there, we can't do it. So the players aren't going to get to play. If we want our kids to play, we have to let them play without spectators.
According to the letter of the law and the statute.
And as a board member, I don't know how we can feel good about not doing that just because parents are, we have to make that hard decision, don't we? But
well, we currently we have a plan in place for West Jefferson games that allow for
some spectators.
We have 10 spectators,
right, but nothing from the other side.
And we have opportunities for administrative help assignments, which allow parents a chance to be in there, but it's not for other fans to come in. No.
And aren't we trying to keep, and this is impossible, but aren't we trying to keep spread out of our community? And when you have other communities come, we don't know what they have. We know what our community has. We can't, and that's even iffy, but we don't know what another community might bring. Just my thought.
That's true. And this is where I think you're right. You're absolutely right. On the flip side, the logic it's hard for us to satisfy the logic of, well, people are going to town all the time.
Mhm.
People are doing this, they're shopping
In and out of the county all-
in and out of the county all the time. Our gyms are big enough to separate it. That's where it honestly is. I can't come up here and defend it logically. I cannot. The only thing that I could say that we have to defend this is because this is what the order says. But honestly, we are interpreting it a little bit into our favor. I guess, how do you guys feel about interpreting it broader? And I don't know, maybe we could table that specific part, come back in a couple days and look at it, or I'll do whatever you guys want me to do.
Can I have, Mrs. Torgerson, can you explain to me again that you said other districts are looking at representatives? Is that how you?
Yeah, so I talked yesterday, I talked to, two community members who actually worked with the board, one from Soda, one from Salmon last night, and Camilla Wadsworth Williams is the one that I spoke to, and I asked her maybe, how their board came to a unanimous decision. Because that's pretty big on a board, because we all have different feelings and maybe different representation that we're representing. And she said, because of all this COVID, like we bring up this, we've had to make adaptations for our community. So you could say Eastern Idaho Public is law, but we make adaptations because we still are free to govern ourselves. So when I was talking to her, she said what they did in the governor's statement, because just like Mr. Williams brought up about, law and legal issues, because we are governed by legal issues, but it's the interpretation and where you want to go. So in their terms, what they did is they took, instead of having, because still the governor says 0 spectators. And so essential workers. And so what they changed is that, in fact, I wrote it down so I wouldn't, if in case I got asked. They wrote it down as 2 essential representatives for each athlete. And for the essential being for the health and well-being of that athlete. And for both teams. And that's how they wrote it down, is the essential is for the health and well-being of each athlete involved. And, and then they put also as equal representation on the court for each athlete, not only for praise, but mentally. And of course, we can see the physical if someone got hurt, liability. But that is how Soda definitely did a broader interpretation, because, and I didn't personally talk to a school board member at Sugar, but I talked to someone who talked to someone, and it was Tyler Fillmore, he's on the board. And, they didn't just open theirs up. They opened it to essential for each representation. But they have some community members who go to every game, and they're not going to be bouncers at the door. Tyler's like, that's not what we stated, but we're not going to throw these people out. So we're going to govern ourselves by law. Now, if one of those people coming they're not going to be part of the stipulation, but that's what Sugar, and then they didn't just open everything up. Now Soda on the different hand, because their numbers have been much higher than us. Their teams have been quarantined. Their volleyball team was quarantined for 2 weeks out of play. They lost 13 games, and I think now that everyone's seen how COVID affects, we can't sit here and give stats, right? Because there's so many different stats to listen to. We just have to, and all of you, because you represent all of us, not just your own individual thoughts on it, we have to govern ourselves to a certain degree. And if the law states essential people, then we need to state what those essential peoples are. And I really liked in talking to Salmon, I felt like they're doing this for us. We still can't, they still can't even come here. But I really agree with how they worded it and the reasoning why they did it, So that's how they stated it.
Thank you.
So,
Thank you.
I guess, what's the definition of a spectator? Is a spectator a parent, or is a spectator the community member that comes in that just has no connection? And You
Mr.
know,
Williams,
yeah,
they still in theirs said 0 spectators.
yes,
So
exactly.
they did still stay
Yeah,
down.
and if the board did look at something like that, we wouldn't want to, I would feel more comfortable being able to defend parents as essential compared to spectator.
Yeah, the terminology needs to be essential.
So here's, I guess, and we can't control this because other districts are already starting this motion. One worry that we do have is that the powers that be come in and say, all right, you guys are, pushing the limits so much, we're just gonna end sports for the time being. I don't know with that risk reward, because we don't know, maybe, and it's hard, because maybe it won't ever happen. Maybe, and that's the thing that sometimes it feels like, if you're raising kids and that family gets to go do that activity and you're doing a different activity, your kids go, why can't we do that? And you try to tell your kids, well, that might be a little dangerous. Well, maybe it is, maybe it's not. Maybe there isn't a reward. Why does that, so is this, I guess, is this worth us going down the line of getting sports shut down completely? I'm curious on, I don't know if the answer is, but we do have some parents of kids in here that are currently playing. Is it worth us taking that stand where now all games are canceled? Or is it going to happen anyway? I'm curious, Madam Chair, if it's all right, I would love to hear some of the thoughts that are here. I know they don't represent all parents, but that's really where I'm feeling. If other districts are already going that way, it could get shut down while we're the only ones, quote unquote, following the rules.
Sure.
But I'm curious.
This is all.
Should we raise our hands?
Yeah, I'm curious.
I just think there's risk in whatever we do.
That's right.
I mean, George Washington woke up in the morning where the fog came in. If he wouldn't have, we wouldn't have America. All the odds were against him. There's always risk. And we're not just talking about West Jefferson. We're talking about our whole conference. And so I don't think West Jefferson's going to get shut down. If it is, the whole state's going to come through. It's not just we're doing something way different and risk. And I just believe there's risk in whatever we do. And if we hunker down and shut the doors and be compliant to someone who's making a call that lives with thousands of other people, we're not really doing our job, and we're doing a disservice to our kids. And that's just how I feel. I think we take risks when we walk out the door.
So it sounds like you'd take that risk if it
I
shut
would
down.
take the risk.
Okay.
Well, you have to realize I coach softball. I mean, I know rightfully so. They're gonna, if they do shut down basketball, the odds of them playing softball, I wouldn't be here voicing that. I know the risks, but a lot of times anxiety causes you to worry about things that are never gonna happen. And I just think we have to do what's best today, not just for us. If we open this up, it's for the districts around us. I mean, we still get 2 parents at a game. We're doing stuff for other people. I think we have to pass it forward, but there's risk in whatever we do.
Yeah, the same thing as Raquel. Let's be that restaurant owner that says, hey, I can open my door to stay alive here. Politicians are brave when there's no pushback. They get constituents that they think aren't going to vote for them again. They lose spine in a hurry. It's just, and exactly what Raquel said, everything we do in life is risk. And just as along this whole thing we've been talking about, I get what you're saying, Shane, that you're concerned about teachers, but we need to do what we can to help those teachers not get this. But I do not agree that we keep a few hundred kids or whatever these numbers are. We're putting the burden of this COVID on the backs of the people who it affects the least, these kids. It doesn't affect them, but we're just loading it on their back instead of let's deal with it, because that's the easiest way to deal with it. Let's do something different. Let's take care of the people that are most affected, and if that means that they have to have a sub for a period of time, I don't know what that's going to detail. I don't have those answers, but I do not agree with putting the burden of this on the people that it affects the least.
We do have to remember it's 99% recovery rate.
Or, yeah.
Yeah.
You lose sight of that.
I don't remember which meeting it was at, but we've talked about this before, where you go and you sit in pods in the gym to social distance. I don't know if that was a PAW meeting or a different board meeting.
That was our exemption plan that was submitted prior to us going into stage 2.
Okay.
So that was a stage 3 exemption plan that was submitted by the district. I'm still curious on risk and reward for we've got varsity and JV parents back there.
Annie?
Is this worth canceling a season over?
Yes.
Okay.
It's gonna get canceled regardless. I mean, it's not just gonna be us. If we do it, they're gonna be canceled just because West Jeff picked it up. Like what Raquel said, it's either gonna be like a statewide thing. Not just gonna be one more school.
Wyatt's a senior basketball and also baseball is number one favorite. So, and we've talked about that. He said, if they close basketball, chances are you won't do baseball. And basketball, he was on the fence about doing. Baseball is like, he loves it. So, and he said, I guess that's what we do then. So, but the parent verbiage is something I had someone bring up to me that, well, why are you fighting for 2 parents? Why it doesn't have one that's gonna come all the time? And that's true. But I like what Raquel said about the support. It doesn't matter who it is. I have, Zion Kimbrough at the ball games looks at me every time he comes back out and sits back on the bench. And then he'll message me after the games and say, did you get pictures of my shot? Did you get pictures of this? Did you see that? And he's a kid, I love all of those ball players and the junior high kids. I love them. And they need to feel supported. They need to feel cheered on. They need to feel encouraged because this is hard enough. It's essential to their mental anxiety, social, emotional health for them to feel supported here, but also away. But those kids, I watched the ball game. I actually watched on an FHS, which a game later, the South and a Sugar game. And I could hear some parents cheering and I could hear them heckling the players on the other team. And I thought, oh, that's so hard. I like to cheer for both teams, even though that's hard sometimes, but that's hard to be there, sitting there playing and have nobody there.
Troy?
You asked earlier if anyone would take a position of the board member and defy the governor. I will take that. Gladly.
We'll get that noted.
When this decision was made to make these kids stay home because 3 kids were sick, I saw how it affected one kid and how heartbroken they were that they couldn't go to school. Made me mad. Very mad. I would look that governor in the face and say, I will not comply with what you have to say. I realize I don't have the legal, I'm not very good at this kind of setting, okay? But I would look him in the face and say, I will not comply because these kids deserve the experience I had when I went to school. And they're not getting it. They deserve to have a crowd cheering them on just like I had. For me to not have that experience in high school, to this day, I would still go back to high school. I loved high school. If I did not have those experiences in a regular setting, I would not go back to high school. There would be no reason for it. It would not be enjoyable. One day. And so I would defy
that. Just one more thing. I just wanted to, what Troy's saying and what we talked about with risk. I just don't feel like that we want to fold this up and keep kids home and everything with the threat of a risk of a lawsuit. We live every day at the threat of getting sued for something. It's risk reward.
But can I clarify on that? Really, the lawsuit part that I'm looking at is for athletic fans only.
Either way.
So with that's a different story. The decision on the remote days, I would do that again. I would make that same decision on this one. There's two different things to that. With the knowledge that I had and information that was given to me with the different meetings that I've been in, the reason why I did this was not to keep kids out of school, was to prevent us really having something tragic happen or potentially happen to our staff members. And if we have staff members that don't feel comfortable there, we don't have a lot of substitutes willing to come in. And then I'm putting substitutes at risk as well. And so on one thing, when I'm looking at the health and safety of our staff, I have to balance that with the kids. And that's why we've been in school this whole time. That's why we've been doing it. We've been winning this situation compared to other districts. So let's separate the two issues of what's happening in school, because I'm not going to back down on what that decision was, and I will do that again, 100%. but we are listening to the risk reward when it comes to a stage 2 health order by the governor. So there's two different things. And so I don't know if there's anybody else. Give me a thumbs up, down if you take the risk on that one. Okay. Looks
All
like,
right,
so that gives us a little bit of feedback, and we don't have to, I think we can come back to the board here with our discussions on what we want to do
Mr.
going
Wood,
forward.
you know,
Madam Chair, do you
going
wanna-
back to the junior high, you know, I don't know if the board, but one of the girls that had COVID, and they have other siblings and friends that they live against. Those junior high girls went to a party on Saturday. Some of them with COVID in their house. When we talk about risk with kids, we can't educate everyone. Everyone still has their freedom, but we do have to realize it's gonna happen. Whether you shut the doors to the school and not allow kids to go, they're still getting together. I had 3 of them in my house yesterday.
but
You can shut the doors and not do it.
Yes.
They're gonna congregate and play video games.
And they will,
And-
and they will in their home,
Yeah.
but not in our public setting. And that,
Right,
and that's,
but what I'm saying is that's part of the problem. What happened is those young kids from junior high, they went to a party. 3 of them had already COVID in their house. Their parents still let them go knowing that one of their kids was positive. We're
so
never gonna be parents that make those decisions.
we're not.
We're
And-
not.
And
That's not our
so
responsibility.
that's why we have 7 days
Right.
that we are having people monitor their symptoms. Because if they can monitor their symptoms and they become sick during that time, I'm hoping that parents at the end of this week, we might have some that they don't feel it right now. But if we have kids that get it sometime during this week, they're not just spreading it continually amongst 180
Yeah,
people.
It's just gonna happen.
But
over and
listen,
over.
listen, people. You've got hospitals in Idaho Falls that are now opening other wings of their hospital to take patients in. If we're not responsible and we don't care whether it spreads or not around here, just because we want to be free, I want to be free too. I'm probably more conservative than anybody in here,
I know.
but. But
Have you
you've got
talked
to
to
be.
the hospital? I was at the
Yes,
hospital
I-
2 weeks ago.
Yes, and they are opening up some wing and
They have
there's-
wings because anyone that's over 65 have symptoms that it is an ISU. They open it up. It doesn't
They-
necessarily mean they're on ventilators.
they, maybe not on ventilators, but the hospitals are full. And if we want to stop a spread going through our community, we've got to be smart about some of the decisions we make.
Kids have to suffer because of that. It's just where they have no symptoms.
Discussion between
They
the board
don't get
members.
sick.
Kids don't, but they give it to others.
Well, right.
They
but
can give
that's-
it to the parents. The parents get sick, the grandparents get sick.
Those people that are afraid should stay home, should stay out of those activities.
You
I
can't
think
stay
we-
home if they live in your home.
We can do
Right,
this.
you can build up antibodies.
65-year-olds aren't
Guys,
that-
we gotta get back. We can do this all day. I do think we need to make a decision today because we are gonna have games. I'm so glad that the kids are playing, first of all. I'm so glad that they're able to do it because those kids that got cheated out of it last year, they'll never have that chance again. Those seniors, that's gone. So I'm so grateful that they're able to play. And I understand if I had kids playing, I would want to be there. But I also appreciate what Mr. Williams has done thus far to get those parents in there while balancing not wanting our district to be sued and attorney fees and all the things. So
there's several things that with the COVID plans that we've looked at. One proposal is that we adopt the changes and amendments to the district COVID plan initially. That one would see if there's any changes that are in this plan. The major changes that we stay in person learning for every level, green through red. That's gonna be the main change, and then just some clarifications on that. So that would be one proposal to the board to approve the district plan. The second one would be, as we have different things coming up, our numbers they have been increasing, just trying to be cautious with that. We want to have, the discussion on athletics or activities. When we have Christmas programs and things like that coming up, does that fall under the same blanket? Is it gonna be representation? And because some of the suggestions that we were going to do for our Christmas programs are record them individually, not go live with it, but record it, put it onto a, I guess, you don't do DVDs anymore, but we put it onto a program and then upload it to YouTube Live for
And
parents
those
to
are broken
see.
down by different grades, so it's not all the elementary together, correct? It's like preschool and kindergarten doing a program,
They,
first and second.
we talked about that as well. And that was a discussion when we were in stage 3 where there was 50 allowed. But if we're going to look at representation, again, there's always more risk anytime we're starting to bring more people in. I know that in the gymnasium, it's a lot easier for us to spread everybody out than it is into like our auditoriums or things like that. And that's that's the part where we still have to have a balance with that. Another suggestion or option is if the board felt like we wanted those December 21st and 22nd is a Monday and Tuesday before Christmas break. Do we want to do blended days on those days to just reduce and have a slow entrance into the holiday?
So blended days on those days, meaning what exactly?
So a blended day.
Same as Thanksgiving.
Yeah, but the blended day would be teachers have the option of inviting, well, teachers will invite kids to come in that day,
Just at your upper level,
all levels.
all levels. So it wouldn't be a mandatory day to attend school.
It wouldn't be a mandatory day to attend
Unless
school. There would be an assignment given to those that don't come to school. And then the teachers would be able to work with smaller groups. You know, one benefit of that is to reduce the number of students that are in the school at the time, still giving those that need to come to school and want to come to school the opportunity to. We always have lower attendance anyway on those days because some people hit the vacations early. And so, but I think it would be a appropriate way to address kids on top of each other all the time. And that's the thing where when we're looking at spread is if we could spread them out more, or we could just ignore that as well. It's just, I just wanted to have that up to the board. So there's really, and then the last one would be if the board would want the superintendent to develop an athletic plan that has representation and 0 spectators. Those would be the 3 things.
So my comment on the athletics thing, I don't have kids old enough to play at the high school level, but I have kids coming up through the elementary, junior high level that have been playing on leagues. And as a parent, it's so disappointing when you can't be there in person to watch your kid play. But there have been comments made that, well, maybe the kids will actually play better if they don't have mom and dad yelling at them from the sidelines. But, you know, for me, it was really hard. Do I let my kid play if I have to drive her 45 minutes
town.
and then I can go in and tie her shoes because she can't tie her shoes, but I have to sit in my car and watch her through a video, you know, and then, you know, it's just different. All this is different. It's not something we've ever experienced. It's not something that any of us ever anticipated experiencing. And it's definitely not something that we ever planned on our kids having to experience. Does it make it wrong that we have to watch in a different way? Not necessarily. Do we have to make the best out of a situation that we're all unhappy with? Sure, sometimes we have to do that. The other league that we've been participating in, I was clear at one end of the stands, nobody else around me. And I kept my mask on the whole time. Did I feel like I was safe? Sure. Could that be the case if you allow one parent in to represent that student? Sure, I don't see why not. You're still allowing them to be there supporting their student, but you're still also thinking of others around who may be adversely affected by the virus, whatever the situation is. So I think we have to weigh the pros and cons. Yes, the pro is the kids get to play. They get to develop their athletic ability. They get to do something that they planned to prepare for over months and through tryouts, and something that they've looked forward to. At the same time, we have to consider parents who have taken their kids to how many practices to get to the point where they get to actually see all the hard work, all the lessons, all the effort put in, played out. Do we take that away from in person? I don't know. But we're not taking it away completely by also asking people to watch through a video. They're still participating, it's just in a different way. So I think there's lots to consider. I don't know how you make that decision easily, because there's a lot to consider. We have to think beyond just ourselves and what we want as an individual for our kid, because there's so many others. It's a team sport. It's not an individual thing. We're all in this together. And so it's a heavy decision to have to make.
So what about other teams coming? Or other parents coming?
If this were to be a consideration that we looked at representation, we would have assigned seats in the gym. I would go in and I would put an X and an X and say somebody has to sit here, an X and an X and somebody has to sit here. We would put a line down between the visitor section and the home section. And I would run it just like I did with my exemption that I put in, even though this isn't a full-on exemption plan. It's
Would you require masks
to get into the gym, yes.
and then keep them on once they're in there?
If they are in their pod 6 feet away from me.
Because the yelling spread a lot of.
Yeah. I think if they're in their pods, I'm not gonna fight that. I think again, it comes back down to a compliance thing. You know, who do I hire to come in and just turn and watch the fans and make sure they have their masks on? But you're absolutely right. That's one of the worries, is because some people don't want to wear them.
Right.
And that's okay if that's what they're, but it's just one of the things that's, you're trying to still, from what I hear you're saying is, how do we still keep it safe if that's what they're doing? What are we still willing to do? If it's going to open it up, are we really willing to, like, if we put the X's down and they go to sit in them, it's all good, and then pretty soon they all start saying, I don't need to sit in that X.
I kind of feel like if you're going to allow representation in, you almost need to do it for both sides. Because it would be awfully hard to be a player on that court playing when you only have one group of people cheering for one team and jeering at the other team the entire time they're on the court. You need to have representation from both sides if you're allowing them to be cheered for, jeered at, hopefully not too much, but you'd almost have to allow it for both sides.
I was talking to one player who said to me, "Oh, it's so nice not to have everybody yelling at you." And we just play the game and it's really quite nice, but that's just one.
That's just one player.
Yeah.
And some others would have different.
They all have different opinions, but they're not taking it quite as hard as we thought they would.
Well, I appreciate your list that you just verbalized. I took notes, so I think we can get started with just the district plan. I feel like by simplifying this, it gives us more control here at home rather than Jefferson County numbers, Rigby heavy. You know, it lets us decide what's happening in our school. So the floor would be open for a motion to approve the district plan as amended.
Madam Chair, I move that we approve the district plan as amended.
Is there a second?
A second.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes. Thank you. The Christmas programs. Do we want to do YouTube Live? Do we want to do representation? What are your thoughts?
See, I would, if you're asking, because here goes that domino effect. If we open it up for athletics, if that's a thing, maybe you think of athletics first before this one. Then we're trying to follow logic, and we can follow logic so far to the point where, well, why are we doing anything? Because, you know, that's the thing, is like, okay, if we do this, then we get to do this, and then we get to do this. And we're, you know, because other one is, and I just put on here for consideration, I don't even know if the board needs to think about this, but like the Christmas holiday parties. On one hand, our traditional parties, they've had room moms come in and they do a big party and everybody does that. Yeah, the kids enjoy that. But is that responsible at this time? Should we be bringing parents in, or should they just drop off a treat, let the teacher run a little party before
How
they
many
go?
parents are coming in?
They usually have 2 to 4 parents that come in per grade level,
Grade level?
which is another thing that
Well, aren't you making all visitors that come in wear masks?
we ask them to, but again,
But they don't.
Well,
we have masks
Some
there
okay,
available.
but if you say we're not going to have a Christmas party unless you can wear a mask, why can't we be a little more?
And,
I mean,
Stick to the conservative here.
doesn't hurt anybody to wear a mask for 10 minutes, does it? I mean,
I don't think we could, I don't know if the board, I'm just looking for feedback on that. That's something that as administration, we could just come in and say, this is how we're running it this year.
I don't think it's a bad idea to suggest that parents contribute to a party and let the teachers handle it. It's an
just
hour.
let them
Yeah.
handle it, give it to the office.
And they would end up having to do it on the Friday before or the Thursday before, whichever.
I just,
Yeah.
and we don't have, I don't think we have to vote on that one because that's something that falls under the administration well. Just open it up for feedback, because if we do vote on the representation during athletic events, we could see people coming back and saying, well, if you're doing it for athletic events, why can't you do it for Christmas parties?
Yeah.
If you're doing it for Christmas parties, how come you can't do it for the Christmas program?
But you also have to consider the number of people involved and the space availability.
Which we don't have on the other two.
No.
Whereas on the athletic events,
We have the
we
space.
could,
Capability of
we
spreading
have
it
the
out.
capability of having that.
So is the program preschool through 5th grade, or do you know, Jeff, are they gonna break it up, or do you know what her plan was?
Are you talking program now or?
Yeah.
Program.
Yeah, yeah, it's set, we were gonna kind of do it differently anyway this year. We're gonna try out the chapel. We're looking at making that kind of a stage. And so we've talked about a couple plans. One would be we spread it out over 3 days. And if we don't have the Monday, Tuesday, or the 21st and the 22nd, then we would move that up, because we're gonna use the Friday and then that Monday and Tuesday. We're gonna do that to limit it. And as far as the people that come in, we would open up to 3 different performances. So that was one plan. And then the other is Kayleen does have it broken down into splitting up the grades, and the class would, come in. And it would be, the problem, I guess, would be similar to sports as far as like the game that we had, the 7th and 8th graders play. And so if you have 7th grade people watching, they also have an 8th grader, of who's coming in and who's going out. And yeah, this whole thing is tough. At the beginning of the year, we had a field trip, the Idaho Museum and the auditorium, a couple hundred yards apart from each other. Auditorium, their people weren't wearing masks. We weren't required to wear a mask. Idaho Museum, they wouldn't open the doors until we all had our masks on. So, it's tough. There's so many nonsensical rules that go with this. I think it will make a good Dr. Seuss book, this COVID idea.
Is anybody up for an analogy? This whole thing is like having a peeing section in a swimming pool. It doesn't work. That's what this whole thing is.
Oh, heavens. Well, what does the board think about the Christmas programs? Are you comfortable leaving that up to the administrators to
I am.
handle along with the Christmas parties? And
Yep. I think the next things that the board would just need to talk on the blended days or the athletic stuff. So
okay, so the 21st and 22nd would be the last 2 days that we're in before the Christmas break. And so if we're considering making those blended days like we did for Thanksgiving, having students come in that
They
maybe
needed
could
the
use
help.
some additional,
Are we still in that situation? I thought this was a one-time thing in November.
This would be to reduce for COVID.
That's the only reason.
Well, they're at the beginning of a new trimester too, so
What day?
No, the last ones were. beginning
Last
of the new
ones were.
trimester.
yeah, it was, yeah. So they're in a new trimester, so it's different subjects. So I guess you could more easily identify at the beginning of the trimester who might need some extra help right at the front.
I think you're always gonna have kids that could use a little
But my,
extra help.
this proposal would be just for COVID initially, but we would take advantage of it academically for those that need it. But if you feel like you want to have just the regular schedule, we can just keep the regular schedule and we will move forward with that.
I'm not sure it's any different than any other day.
You'd have a full 2 weeks of students apart from each other. The majority.
The majority.
You'll still have those that'll get together, but you'd have the majority apart for a good 2 weeks.
Floor would be open for a motion. If you want to make those blended days or not.
Madam Chair, I move that we approve blended days for December 21st and 22nd.
Is there a second?
I'll second that. I think we need to have those blended days available for the kids that need it.
Is there any other discussion?
I'm not sure. I don't think they need blended days right then. And you said it's just for COVID, but why is it any different than the Friday before? Just because you have longer, but
That's
if
really
you
the
didn't have Christmas, you'd be going a full week.
I'd rather they do a blended day than a remote day. I still don't have internet at my house.
Rather
And
they
so
do-
this week,
yeah.
having an 8th grader at home who has assignments
Horrible.
strictly online
Yeah.
is proving to be one heck of a deal to have
I
to
understand that, but
do.
I'm just saying, why do we need anything at all? Why don't we just go the days and count them? We've already missed so much, to miss more. That's my argument.
Well, there's been a motion and it's been seconded. So those in favor of making those blended days, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Yeah.
Okay, that motion passes. Thank you. And finally, the floor will be open for a motion to have Mr. Williams develop an athletic plan that would include 2 representatives per player on both
For both
teams.
And with
Or
that,
you can word that however.
and as with discussion on that, is that for just the game happening at that time? So for example, C team, representatives for the C team game, once the game is over, those representatives are no longer.
Would have to leave.
They're no longer representatives, right? Is that
Yeah.
with the
That's
understanding?
my understanding.
That's my understanding.
Well, that's how it is now already, isn't it?
That's how we're
That
doing
they
it.
have to
That's-
leave after each game.
That's how we're doing it with spectators, yes.
That's how it is with the leagues that kids have been playing in. They have to leave the venue,
I just want to make sure.
sanitized, and then people.
So you're not letting anybody from the other team?
No, they would have 2 representatives to be able to come in.
Per player.
But no spectators.
So basically, parents can come in.
So how many players are on a team?
Approximately 10.
10? So you're looking at how many representatives?
40.
40 people.
40 total within the gym.
On one side that you could spread
We'll
out.
split it in half.
It's a big gym.
It is a big gym. I think it can be done.
All right, let me ask you this. If somebody gets sick
From this.
from this, what's our liability?
How can they prove that they got sick from this? How can they prove they didn't get sick walking into Costco?
Well,
Costco with
somebody,
hundreds of people.
you know,
Yeah, no,
traces it back, says
As
they
you're
are.
talking about representatives for each kid, I
yes.
think we need to be specific about what that means. Does that mean 2 adults? Does that mean an adult and a child? Does it mean
that you can have 6 representatives? Like, you need to be very specific as a board as to what your definition is of representatives for players.
Well, and if people are saying about safety, it doesn't, and somebody that can make a legal decision for them, it probably should be an adult. At least one adult, you know, like on that. You can't send both of your teenage kids to be the representative if the argument is for, I know you send them in your cars all the time. But I think,
So it's gotta be at least one adult,
Who's trying to be responsible?
and how about the second person?
I know the liability, and here's the thing, if you're asking the question on the liability, this will lessen the liability protection. It will, and that's what the lawyer says, it will lessen the liability protection. And so
Even if worded like.
well, it lessens it, but it makes it for a pretty good argument in court. Because the thing is, there's nothing clear cut about any of this at all. But you'd have to go in and say, well, we're following the stage 2 order. We're not letting any spectators in, but we're letting in
40 or.
not that they're not
40 or so.
spectators though.
40 or so representatives.
But the reason why they're there is for liability protection on other ends. And I guess that's the thing that you're looking at. Yeah, we might be pushing the boundaries on a COVID liability or being reduced from there. But then we are allowing parents to be there if the kid gets injured or not.
A safety issue.
Because then the only other option, I guess, if we're trying to look at things that are equitable, are to cancel everything completely. That's not anything that we're suggesting here.
No.
But if that's what something from a higher up comes in and says, I don't like what you're doing, that's their next step logically to do it. I don't think they're gonna send out, I don't know. I hope not. I hope not. But it does, anything that we do that's not exactly to it opens us up for liability. And it is what it is.
Mr. Williams, something to consider is, does it just lessen our liability when it comes to athletics, or will it affect our liability across the board?
We are, the liability is the same across the board, as for how I read that. I don't know if you read through there, I don't know if it's any different.
And I think that's something that the board needs to recognize, that this isn't just about increasing our liability when it comes to our athletic events, but it's increasing our liability in the entire district.
Which we already are doing.
Right. I wanted that to be clarified.
But that's the part where, again, going back to if we make an exception here, how far does that domino go?
Mhm.
And I do know that this doesn't make it right or less than the liability, but we can make it where we spread those people out all over. We'll still take things to make it safe, regardless of whether or not, like with masks, regardless of whether or not it's approved, but it's not spectators. And I think that's the thing, is we're not calling these people spectators.
You're just not letting anybody come in and watch, and you're not going to allow children to come in and run up and down the halls and back and forth in front of the bleachers. You have people who are coming specifically to observe and to watch a team play, to watch a player play.
Yeah.
And so I think, honestly, the games are going to be more toned down in how they've been in the past. So those coming should be responsible and know what's expected to come and watch.
Well, I think with that, if you try to dictate who can be a representative and who can't, I think it should be a parents, but I don't want to police that.
No, we currently have one pass for each student. Like we create the little cards.
Mm-hmm.
We would just do the same thing. We'll just create representative number 2, even though the other ones do say spectator, but that was with our other thing. We can make some others that say representative 1, representative 2. And then as other districts come in, we just have the names of the kids and we just tally who they are, put them in their assigned seats. As soon as that game is done, they will leave. I know that's gonna be challenging for those that have a C team player and then a varsity player. We're already doing that anyway. Because if we don't do that and we have 2 representatives per person and they stay the whole night, then we're pushing 120
Right.
by the end of the night. So I don't
So
know.
they gotta leave after each game.
Madam Chair, Mrs. Torgerson had a comment. If you would be okay to address her.
When we went to state volleyball, what they did is they had beforehand, like, say Salmon's coming to our place. They had their coaches make a list of who the representatives are gonna be. And that's how state monitored it with all of their teams, is that just has to be emailed or whatever. So you got to the door and they had to state their name. And that's how it was monitored, much like a ticket taker. But they had a list from the opposing teams already determined, which might be a better plan than just, if you're wondering how it's gonna work.
Just give them so many allocations, you know, you've got 20 slots, go to your athletic director at your district. He gives this, then he passes on that list of who those 20 spectators or representatives will be for that game.
You almost
We have that
messed
list.
up.
I know.
I think it's a good compromise. It's not ideal.
Do you limit the age? Like, do you say no one 10 and under?
I don't think
Because
so.
are people going to bring in a lap kid?
Well, if mom wants to come but has a little one and can't come unless she brings little one,
Does that count as your 2 spectators?
sure.
But will that be argued that, well, they're sitting on my lap the whole time and they're not an adult, they're not really going to participate?
That's probably not a fight I'm willing to have.
Yeah, that's
Bring them.
splitting hairs too thin there.
So instead of just having one parent per student that we have, per player that we have now, and no outside, we're increasing to 2 and 2 more coming in the middle of a huge pandemic.
How's it any different than somebody traveling to Hawaii? during
Probably
the
not.
pandemic?
I don't know, I just brought it up.
I've also heard people are so afraid of dying that they stop living. And I don't want to stop living.
That's true, but if you're a person that has,
No, and I don't take this lightly, and I understand there are people at high risk for this,
and they say, stay home, but
but they don't
it's
want to stop living
impossible
either.
to stay home all the time.
No, and it is hard to stay home all
If
the time.
everybody was more, you know. Just saying.
Well, any more discussion?
If you want to, Madam Chair, Aaron Wood might have a point if you want to.
Aaron, did you have
I
something?
just wanted to bring something to your attention, and maybe it will help Mrs. Perkins kind of understand the liability part of it. So we have, I have a niece, she plays for South Fremont, and she has diabetes. So for example, this last weekend, on Friday, she was at practice and her number dropped like dangerously low, and her parents have it on their cell phone. The coaches, none of these coaches are trained for this stuff. Nobody really ideally knows what to do. So her numbers dropped super low. So she calls her mom. She's like, you gotta bring me something right now. So her mom comes, brings her something. She feels a little bit better, continues practicing, drops again. They have to rush something to her. So they kind of get her levels a little bit stable. Then they head to a game the next night. And the game was over in like Wendell, Parma. So it was far away. So no spectators are allowed. No visiting spectators. So my sister and her husband take her to the gym, and they say, we can't risk this. So they're sitting in the car, she's playing ball, and she's in the middle of the game. She's not checking her numbers. They get on the notification, her numbers are extremely low. And here's my sister, they're in the car, and they're like, we gotta get to her. What are we gonna do? So my brother-in-law goes, pounds on the door because everything's locked. In the meantime, her numbers are dropping. So what do you do? So that finally someone comes to the door. He's like, I gotta get to my daughter. She's gotta have something. She's dropping. It's gonna get bad. She was so bad to the point where she could not feel her own body. Who is going to be liable at that point? So you think about the liability there. You might have a lawsuit because you have too many people. Something happens to an athlete, you're gonna have a lawsuit either way. So you kind of have to look at that liability. In that case, Absolutely, I'm willing to take the risk to be there for my kid to make sure she's healthy and strong. So that's kind of the point that I wanted to make about.
Right, but you can't control what another district is gonna do. So if that child's gonna go to another district that won't let you in, or that won't let spectators in,
They have asked for permission, and they
Well,
have permission because.
that
she-
sounds good. That
she
sounds like a
has-
good
they have to be
solution.
there.
But the only one we can control is our district, and we're letting one parent in right now.
But we can let Salmon come if they have, we can let an away team come to be there as a representative, an essential person for their own child. That's the point I'm trying to make.
One
If we
person.
can let somebody, yes, here we have control at home.
Yeah.
In Parma, they had no control, and for them to get to her could have been life threatening.
Right,
So that's the point of having them welcome here.
thank you.
All right. Well, if there's no further discussion, the floor will be open for a motion.
Yep. Madam Chair, I make a motion that we allow representatives into the ball games for each athlete having 2 representatives.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
Did I word that right?
I think so.
Is your concern 2 representatives versus 1? Would you be more comfortable if it was 1 representative per student?
No, I wouldn't. I was just asking questions, just wanted to know more about it. I just wanted to get a feel
I think,
for the right thing.
Right.
My one big worry, I don't care if there's 15 people in there for each student. That would be fine, but my one big concern is our district liability. That's all I was
well,
concerned about. I'm not concerned about how many people, and if 2 is what we're gonna do, that's fine with me, but I'm concerned about our ability. And I see that we've got it whether we come or go. It seems like if something happens, we have liability no matter what we do, but I wanna be able to defend what we do. I wanna be able to say that we made a smart decision and not just one based on hysteria or people, parents, trying to twist our arms to do something we shouldn't do, or make the smart decision. That's why we're on the board, is to make smart decisions. And if you all think this is a smart decision.
I made that motion on the thinking that it's a safety issue, just like the person said.
You can do that with 1.
Well, I don't think 1 or 2 is gonna make that big a difference.
If I were thinking just for
Parents.
myself, it's my
Parents.
son has to always take his little boy with him if he's going to watch girl or.
So do we want to say, but here's the thing, again, because it brings up a good point.
Mhm.
Do we want to call it household representatives or family representatives? Because then because if we're looking at through COVID and trying to make sure that where they're at, you want that risk to be only with those that are wanting to assume that risk to get there. And so,
So
or do we?
The 2 or 1, if one
Well,
parent has it, it's.
Mrs. Chair,
Mhm.
sorry if I'm interrupting, but we do have to realize that every household is very different. And that you do have parents that are divorced and you start nitpicking everything, you're just going down a more narrow road.
Agreed.
We do have to allow people, I mean, every household is not the same.
So on a blended family, divorced family, they don't get 4, they get 2 still. And they just have to choose, and then we can put X's, they don't have to sit right next to each other.
I'm not opposed to a show.
I know. So,
Okay.
All right, so that was my main
I
concern.
think too, I'll make the plan however the board decides, so.
So
That was your thought behind that motion?
Yep, that's my thought behind the motion.
All right, we'll call for a vote then. Those in favor of allowing 2 representatives per athlete?
For each student.
Those in
Athlete.
favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I don't know. But I'll go with the board goes with. Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes. Thank you. I just appreciate our board. You guys all bring
These are tough
wonderful
decisions.
points and we're civil and it's a nice change.
This is tough decisions.
Okay, last thing, we have a work meeting on Thursday. And we'll be talking about the calendar with Mr. Barzee and Mr. D. So that'll be a really good meeting. Again at 9 a.m. So we'll see you guys then. The floor will be open for motion to adjourn.
Madam Chair, I move that we adjourn this meeting.
Is there a second?
I second that.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Thank you for being here.